Sex is the life force energy that runs through us all. The link between sex, creativity, and the sense of aliveness is strong. Can you use sexual energy for your spiritual evolution? Or perhaps for emotional healing? Is it even possible? Clinical sexologist Dr. Martha Tara Lee will explore all these and more on the Eros Evolution Show here on OMTimes Radio and TV.
Hello, and welcome to Eros Evolution. This is where sexuality and spirituality meets. So I have with me Vernessa Chuah. She has always wanted to be a mother, and her journey to losing 3 angel babies has transformed her grief energy into supporting others whose babies are gone too soon. Today's show is called Grief Kicks In When Your Body is Failing You. So more about Vernessa Chuah. She is the first pregnancy and infant loss coach in Southeast Asia and is a certified advanced grief recovery specialist. Featured in Channel News Asia and Sassy Mama. Her story has been published in a book called Rise Up and Others Encouraging Stories to Light Up and Resilience, to Shine Light and Resilience. So she's also been interviewed by Mom Space and The Finder. So there was an infection that attacked her right ear in 2012. So she removed her hearing bones and was permanently 100% right ear deaf. She had a baby at 2018 and yet received another shocking news that the same infection has attacked her face in 2019. So she lost her facial nerves and the possible ability to smile and have clear speech with her child. So Vernessa is no stranger to different types of grief. So you may find the sadness in grief intense and uneasy, yet she finds comfort in supporting others to release and move forward through coaching, support group, mindfulness, art, somatic, and journaling experience. So she's now the founder of Mindful Space, which is the first physical platform that allows holistic and fun play-based activities for parents and children. So you can find her at Vernessa.coach. That's Vernessa. It's a special spelling. So Vernessa. And Instagram pregnancy.loss.coach. You also have a website, right?
Yes, so mindfulspace.com.sg is my
Yes,
current
correct.
website.
Okay, Mindful Space. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So I'm sure all of us are very interested to hear about your journey after that introduction. So please share with us more.
Yep. So just a slight correction. It's 2016 when the infection occurred. Yeah, I heard you say 2012. All right. Today we're going to actually talk about a really heavy topic, grief. And it's a topic that most of the time, people kind of avoid. We're not too sure how to talk about it. We're not too sure what to say, how to hold space. And it's kind of quite taboo in some culture to talk about death. But if you think about it, death is the only thing that none of us can actually escape, but yet we are afraid of it sometimes. And when we talk about grief, people always kind of think about death, but actually there are more than 40 types of different losses, tangible and intangible losses. So grief is normal and natural. And what is the definition of grief? Maybe we can go into that a bit. So grief is basically when you feel conflicted, the conflicting feelings caused by the end or a change in a familiar pattern or behavior. Okay, so it can be a death, but it can also be getting married because that changes, the whole routine and lifestyle, and now you're going to be with someone else. Sometimes when you feel sad, sometimes if you're happy, it's two conflicting feelings. It can be change of work environment. It can be pregnancy, it can be retirement, it can be troubles, financially at home or, with in-laws. During the COVID, we see a lot of people going through grief because it was change in working hours or condition, change in the social activities, change in the number of family reunions, eating habits, going out or sleeping habits. This can also be grief. Other types of intangible loss can be loss of trust, loss of safety, loss of connection, loss of approval, or even loss of control of my body. So just a little bit of definition of the grief before we kind of head in. So we understand that it doesn't necessarily always means death, right? Sometimes people have that resonate grief with death. It can be as long as there's a stop or end or change in your behavior or pattern that you are used to. Okay. And here today, I'll talk about a few things of the grief that I actually go through and my journey to who I am today. Um, when my body initially failed to have a baby, I, as a woman, kind of feel ashamed, right? Because I was quite a healthy eater, I had quite a healthy lifestyle. And I got very frustrated, angry. Why is this occurring again and again, And the message that society is sending me, and myself is sending myself, especially, it's like, I'm not good enough, you know. At that age where all your friends are starting to get babies, social media is bombarded with gender reviews, baby shower, my baby crawling, baby birthdays. It starts to get into me a little. Almost there is a sense of needing that validation and approval that, oh, I'm part of this, I'm part of this society, I'm okay, that sense of belonging. And then when relatives starts to ask you during like Chinese New Year or gathering, that's one of the things that I didn't really enjoy a lot, because it kind of made me feel like something is missing and I'm not there yet. And and I really get annoyed when sometimes people tell me like, oh, you understand when you're a mother, you will know when you're a mother, now you don't understand yet. Because that kind of fits on to like, you're still not there yet, you don't know yet, right? So my my first and second was what people would call unplanned pregnancy loss, which is, in other words, miscarriage. I kind of don't like to use the word miscarriage sometimes because it brings the negative connotation of like I intentionally miscarried a baby. Yeah, but a lot of times it's beyond what we can do at that time. My third pregnancy loss was a planned loss, and that was really, really hard. Even initially, for me to come out to actually talk about the story, because what people would call abortion, and immediately there's that judgment, right? Oh my God, you abort the baby. What kind of mom are you? What kind of woman are you? But then I was like, as I start to come out and I start to hear the story of other people, I realized that it's actually a very powerful journey of empowering myself and others as well. A lot of women started to come out and tell me like, Vern, I've never ever told someone that I've actually aborted, not even my spouse. Some of them say I didn't have a choice at that time because my relationship was abusive and I need to get out of the relationship. If I have a baby, the child will be stuck, and it will be victimized. So there was a lot of story behind that. For me, I needed to abort. I'm not justifying what I did was right, but I'm just saying that my reason that I need to let go of the baby, which was a really, really, really tough one. Um, Maybe before I tell you the reason, I tell you the journey first. Um, my first two pregnancies, the old wives' tale, especially in Asia, not to tell anyone until you pass the first trimester, until you pass the 3 months mark. And I'm a person who doesn't really believe in old wives' tale, neither do I follow. Um, and then when I lost my second one, I was like, maybe there's no harm, maybe I'll try. So I actually flew back home to stay with my mom, and I did everything the old wives' tale kind of like don't do rigorous exercise, be gentle. So I just eat and sleep every day, and being far away from my husband that I wasn't too happy about because I feel a bit lonely. And then I didn't even tell my close friends; they were near me. But by the 12-week mark, I remember very clearly. I was very, very excited because I was like, this is it. I can finally go out and tell my friends and do my things, have a life. Because for the past 3 months, I was just like eating, sleeping, watching TV, reading book, and was just staying very domestic, which is not very in me, not very natural for me. Um, And during the scan, there was a moment of silence. And immediately, that awkward silence felt very, very familiar to me. And I started to get a little bit like, okay, it's coming again. And then he was like, oh, can you turn to your left again, right again? But I could see the heartbeat. I could see the heartbeat. So I was like, there's heartbeat. So because the first two, there wasn't a heartbeat, right? And um, when he told me that the baby's organs were outside of the baby, I literally just broke down. I, I didn't know what to think of at that time. He'd say, the baby's stomach was outside of the baby. The baby intestine was outside of the baby. So if we were to deliver the baby, it will have challenge with eating, breathing, digesting, going to a toilet. It will need to be on tubes. And then they will try to push all the organs, make a hole and push all the organs back after they deliver. And we're like, okay, let's research and see what's the possibility. And at that time, the doctor actually kind of hinted us that he thinks it's wiser to actually let go. And at that time, I was like, no, it's we have hope, we're gonna try. I think we were struggling for 2 weeks, trying to make it work. And the turning point was when my dad kind of pulled my spouse out and say, we have lost. So I lost a brother before. So my parents lost a son before, and he said, the journey it's very very painful to deliver a child out in the world and then see them suffering and going through all the pain and the tubes and always in hospitals and asking when can I play and run again. It's just so much harder. And whether we have the finance to actually be with the child, because one of us wouldn't be able to work, we need to be 24/7. The child needs us very dependent, whether eating, pooing, sleeping, breathing, even breathing, the basic things, right? It's because if you don't have the finance, then what's going to happen? It's going to suffer more. And that was a really hard decision. And pulling off the plug was, I think, the most, to today, the most difficult moment in my life, because what happens is the baby's organs was outside of the baby, and literally the doctor has a really, really long needle to put through my stomach to reach the baby and try to reach his heart to stop. But the baby was facing instead of facing upwards towards the belly button, because of its organs, it was very heavy, it was facing backwards. So the needle was just there, waiting for the right moment to stop the heart. And we were just waiting, and that's such a killer. I remember the minute it stopped the heart, I broke down so bad, because I took its life away, right? I didn't give it a chance. And I was just trying to say, I'm so sorry that I need to do this. I really wish I don't have to do this. And it was a very intense journey. And the doctor needed the body to realize that the baby is no longer there, because I already did DNC 2 times. And he doesn't want me to do any more DNC. So I actually need to deliver the baby out. But because the baby's organs were outside the baby, it got stuck at the birth canal as well. And I remember the doctor telling me that, the pain is going to come, it's intense, let us know so we can give you painkillers. I didn't ask for painkillers. And when he came and he's finally realizing that I'm delivering, he said, why didn't you ask for painkillers? I think at that time, my emotional pain was so strong. I didn't feel that physical pain. So after I delivered the child, I think even to today, I do miss the child a lot. And I didn't understand why at that time. The doctor asked me, do you want to see your child? And at the time, it was very just like, okay, let's just get this done and over with. And I was like, nah, it's okay. And when he asked me, the nurse and doctor asked me for the third time, I was like, okay, maybe there's a reason. And I'm so glad I did. I just came up and see, at the same time, I feel very sad because its intestines and stomach were outside. The first flash was reminding me of the animal sometimes that's on the road, and all the stomachs and everything are out. So that was my last picture, like, memory of my child. So it was very intense in that sense. Um, and and then I think what was even more challenging after that was what happens when others say things that actually hurt. Are you okay if I just go through yeah? Okay. Um, I I start to have people, constantly asking me, why did it happen? So what did the doctor say? And it wasn't really so much to support me. It's just to fill in the answers they need for their questions, and that really frustrates and upset me. So everyone comes and asks the same question. Oh, so what happened? What did the doctor say? Why is it like that? And then when they get the answers, they're like, oh, okay, they will start giving you their own theory of what they think might be the case of what happened to you, and kind of basically be a doctor. Um, and I didn't need that, because it's almost like if your friend tell you, hey, you know what, I got cancer, are you going to ask your friend like, oh, why do you get cancer? How do you get cancer? You don't ask questions like that. But sometimes people can be a bit more insensitive. And I just didn't like the fact that a lot of people were just asking for their own needs instead of my needs. So then I started to tend to avoid people who are less supportive, and also crying a lot. That's how I release my energy. So I'm not afraid to cry, even to today. I'm okay to hold space for myself when I feel frustrated or angry, and I kind of just sometimes need to talk to someone or just cry it out, so that it kind of get out of my system, right? And then I also learned to cope better each time with people telling me negative things. I'll just smile and just walk away, because I realized if I channel too much energy, my anger and sadness towards them is really not worth, because it's taking a toll out of my body, so that's when I prefer not to focus on people's negative comments. But then I also, after that, kind of reflected upon it and say, you know what? Actually, sometimes they have very good intention. It's just that they don't know what to say or how to say. So they're like, oh, maybe it's because you drink cold drinks. Maybe it's because you walk off down the stairs. All these like superstitious things. But actually, what they really kind of mean is they have good intentions to just want you to be okay. But I don't know. Okay, this is a BG generalization. Maybe I could say in my context, in this Asian context, there's a lot of negative affirmation sometimes, a negative reinforcement, because it almost sometimes make me doubt the things I do. Whether is this right? Maybe they are right, and I start to blindly follow other people's or wives' tales, and then I was like, nah, this couldn't be it. When I had my third loss, and remember I told you I had that 3 months period of just following all the old rules, right? I told myself, like, you know what? If shit really wants to happen, it happens. Doesn't matter whether I follow or I don't follow. So then I started to read more, and then I started to make sure I have professional advice more, to actually ground myself with science and facts instead of just following blindly what people want me to do. And asking myself, why do I really want to be a mother so badly? What happens if I'm never going to be a mother? So I think asking myself this really, really deep question let me peel the layer that's inside me. Yeah, yeah. Um, so that I feel for me the grief goes basically in me into my body, and the trauma and everything stays in my body, because at that time I didn't really know how to release it. So if I look back at the sequence of activities in 2010, I knew I had an ear infection, uh, but the doctor didn't want to open and operate it, because they feel like if they were to open it, they're going to introduce more things to it. And the doctor can only see what, and the doctor can only see and diagnose based on your CT scan, your X-ray, your MRI scan, and it's black and white and things like that. Um, but whether they can see something there, but whether it's liquid, whether it's other forms, they're not too sure. And I went to about 7 different ENTs, and they told me like, I think there's no need for surgery because the moment we open it up, it might introduce new infection or be more vulnerable. So I kind of just keep it there. But then 2014, I lost my second child. 2016, I lost my third child. Very, very closely right after that, my infection that has been inside me for the past 5, 6 years suddenly just started to attack me very, very aggressively. Um, and by the time I went to the doctors, right, the doctor said, "Oh, you're actually 1 year deaf." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't realize that." And some of the people was asking me, "Wait a minute, but what makes you first go for a checkup, right? To test your auditory back in 2010?" And that's also a really funny story because my cousin at that time used to live with me, and she gets really, really frustrated with me. And then one day she just shouted at me and say, "You know what? I think you're really deaf. You can't really hear what I say to you all the time." And then I was like, "Oh, really? Maybe I should really go for a check." And that's how I actually found out in 2010 I had a ear infection. Um, and they told me not to do anything about it. But what I realized after my third pregnancy loss, the grief in me kind of agitated the whole thing. It got more invasive, right? Because I feel we can manipulate what our brain wants us to believe, right? If you tell your brain enough times, you'll kind of believe it's true. But the thing is, the body doesn't lie. That also started my journey. Like, maybe there's a lot of trauma. Maybe there's a lot more grief than I knew how to cope. Then I became learning about somatics, became a pregnancy loss coach, learning about grief recovery. But when I initially find out that I was 100% 1 year deaf, shock is one for sure, because it's been benign for so many years, and I remember very, very clearly I was able to manifest and hold my body to be okay for a lot of events. So, giving you an example, when my ear infection hit, the doctors didn't have a slot for me yet. The doctor that I have was 3 months waiting list, so I needed to wait for 3 months. And I remember because the infection kind of ate up my hearing bones, and every day it's basically like termites. Whatever it comes across, it kind of eat it up. So my flesh, my bones, my nerves. So basically, can you imagine every single day you're not too sure what it is? It's like a knife, kind of like peeling each layer off you, and I was in so much pain. There were days I couldn't even get up from my bed. The minute I get up, I got vertigo and I start puking. And it was just really intense. And then when I told the doctor, I'm not too sure if I can wait 3 more months. And he was like, "Oh my God, your condition is actually quite bad. Can you come in? We need to do the surgery as soon as possible." Right? And I realized my coping mechanism at that time was I was trying to be strong. Uh, Not so some for myself, yes, but also for others. I was worried that I was going to be a burden for other people. So I was trying to stay as positive as I can. My husband at that time was very worried. I was like, "Oh, how are you going to be coping?" And I was like, "You know what? The good thing is I'm already 1 year deaf, like without even me realizing it, because the infection ate up my hearing bones. So there's a gap, right? So when sound vibrates through, it cannot actually reach my cochlea because there's a gap in my bones." So I told him that, it's okay. At least I got the other ear. So I 100% deaf in my right ear, and I just purely listen with my left ear. And because as you can see, I'm quite a chatty person, I didn't even have time for Dr. Mata to ask me any questions yet. I told him that it's okay because at least I can still talk. I'll be more depressed if I can't talk, right? So I can hear and I can still talk. That's okay. And I remember me trying to be very strong for the people around me. But inside me, am I scared? Hell yeah. I'm scared too, right? But that's part of me coping, right? And then I started joking, saying, you know what? Now, literally, I have selective hearing. And, I could also tell my husband that now that you snore, I just need to sleep on the other side and I can't hear you. It's like a mute button, right? But then, of course, there are other grief because I could not dive again. They reconstructed my hearing drums. So it's a fake one, it's not really a functional one. So I can't actually equalize myself. So that was also a grief because I used to be able to dive and I can't dive anymore. So, different patterns of grief, right? Um, yeah. Do you have any questions for me before I continue?
No, I just really appreciate you sharing with us your story.
Yep. Yep. And then that kind of passed. So I've like 20 hours teachers, and I'm like, okay, that's gone. But the doctor did say to me that in your lifetime there's a 10% chance of reoccurrence. And I was like, but I'm healthy, I'm young, I'm okay. Um, and then 2018 I got pregnant, right? And no, sorry, 2017 because I delivered her in 2018. Um, how did I feel when I was pregnant again? Was I scared? Was I anxious? Yes, I was excited. Yet, what if it happens again? And I think this is what a lot of moms who got pregnant with their rainbow baby feel when they share with me. Like they're always constantly, is there heartbeat? Is there, am I doing things right? And I remember I told myself, on your third pregnancy, I tried to do everything that people kind of tell me that I should do, but shit still happens. So
Yeah.
this time around,
So
sorry.
yeah, so sorry, but we do have a break and we'll come back and Vanessa will share her story more later.
Yep.
OMTimes TV. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. OMTimes Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, OMTimes offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an OMTimes magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on OMTimes TV and broadcasting it across the extensive OMTimes radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. OMTimes. Open yourself to the possibilities.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse, walk a mile in my shoes.
Hi, welcome back with Vernessa Chuah, and today we're talking about pregnancy loss. So just before the break, she was sharing about the loss of her 3 babies and how she got pregnant for a 4th time. And also her hearing loss on her right ear. So you can check out her website at mindfulspace.com. So thank you for sharing your story. So you started to share about how you got pregnant for a 4th time.
Yep. By the way, it's mindfulspace.com.sg.
Right. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. So yeah, when I got pregnant for the 4th time, I told myself like, Vernessa, you can go through what you've been through and just stay home and do all those things, or you can let your child experience and see the world, feel the world through your womb. I don't know whether this child is going to make it or not, is whether going to see this world or not. But in this moment, this bonding, this journey, what do I want? Do I want my child to be having fear and living, feeling that emotions in me is always anxious, right? Or do I want my child to, maybe it's a short moment, but it's a good moment. So there are days that are, when there's less kids, I'll be like, okay, maybe things might happen again, but also telling myself, if a miscarriage or loss is going to happen, there's nothing I can do to stop it anyway, right? I've already eat healthy, sleep healthy, do all the things I can. A lot of things are beyond control. So, as long as I'm not like being unhealthy, life goes on because there's nothing much I can do. So with that mentality, I remember very, very clearly that I actually went to travel to Nepal and hike while Alwana is actually my womb. And of course, I didn't tell anyone except my husband and doctor visit, right? I didn't tell my parents because not a good example, okay? And I hope that when my daughter grows up, she doesn't follow my footsteps, but I don't like to be nagged. So I tend to do things, then tell, right? But I make sure like the doctors say it's safe, don't go above 10,000 feet. Make sure there's enough oxygen, make sure there's a hospital nearby. We kind of changed the path that we hike in Nepal. We had a porter to carry my things instead of me carrying, because this is our second trip there. And I remember um, I continue to work, I continue to go for family gatherings, for weddings in 7 different countries, Japan, Hong Kong, Australia, Philippines, Malaysia. And what was very, very empowering for me was I took a hypnobirthing course. And that was a life-changing for me because in the hypnobirthing course, it basically tells you for thousands and thousands of years, women's body has been engineered to conceive children, and labor kids. You don't need to go and tell your baby, can you please grow hands? Can you please grow hair? It just naturally happen. And in the back, in the olden days when they're farmers and things like that, they really just trust their body. They don't have cesarean, they don't have epidural, but because now with in more modern medical and people like speed, fast, convenience, we kind of just go to this cesarean, this is the choice, right? But hypnobirthing was teaching me how to just trust my body and listen to my body. And one of the best decisions I made, because I remember very clearly we were in Yarra Valley in Melbourne, and I was a driver because I'm not drinking, the others are drinking, so I'm driving. And yes, the water decides to break in when we are out in the wineries, right? But it wasn't a gush of water, it was just a little bit of sip. So I kind of thought that, maybe there's just more discharge. But by noontime, I know that it wasn't discharge because my pants were all wet. My black pants was all wet. So it's good to wear black because nobody would notice it. My mom, my aunt, my cousin didn't notice it. But then I called the hospital, and because I was hypnobirthing trained, I was very calm and I was able to tell them what's the color, order, amount, and time. And then she said, sounds like your water has, broken. And I say, okay. And she says, you can come in this evening. And that was a keyword I catch, like, you mean this evening? Like, I don't need to come right now? Because when I called, it was about 3 o'clock. And my water broke at 10, right? So I said, okay, I'll come in this evening. That's fine. And I actually drove everyone back to Melbourne. So it was like with the jam, it's about 2 hours, right? And when they didn't know, I was having contraction as well. When I went to the hospital, because I was so calm, the nurse didn't believe that I was delivering, right? She was like, I think you can come back tomorrow because, when people have contraction, they won't be so calm. I was just breathing in and out. There was no drama, no screaming. I was like, nah, the intensity and the interval, because in hypnobirthing, they also teach you how to count the timing. I said, it's coming. And she's like, nah, I don't think so. And because at that time I was able to joke around as well. And she's like, I need to keep the emergency room for the ambulance. And then in my mind, I was like, no, I'm going to deliver tonight. When she came back 15 minutes later to usher me out, I was very, very firm. I say, the baby's coming out. I'm delivering the baby. I'm not going anywhere except the labor ward. Um, I, I didn't budge at all. There was no room for negotiation for me at that time. I was very, very firm. I was very, very clear what I want. And they had no choice but to take me into the labor room. And then she checked me again. She said, oh my God, you're 10 cm dilated now because 45 minutes ago, I was only 3 cm. And to go to 3 to 10 cm, sometimes people take like a whole day. But she was like, whoa, you dilated really fast. I was like, that's why I mentioned I'm going to have the baby. And then she's like, you're already in stage 2 now. You need to have the baby now. And I was like, first you don't let me have the baby, and then now I need to have the baby now. So, but the hypnobirthing course really helped me because I was able to say, okay, can you switch off the lights? Can you take out the yoga mat, take out the yoga ball? I was putting on my auditory audio as well. And I love it because the auditory audio, was telling me, while more you welcome your baby, trust your body. When you have contraction, it's massaging your baby out. So it's a lot of positive affirmations as well. So yeah, within the next 30 minutes, she came in again and she's like, I don't know how to help you because I'm squatting down to deliver. It's using gravity. I wasn't lying down. I was like, okay, you know what? Don't worry. I'll deliver it myself. You just go do what you need to do. When it's ready, I'll call you. So she was trying to find a mirror to see, but um, and I remember telling Elvana, work with mommy, we'll work this out together. And then the nurse came back in again. She's like, you're already in stage 2. You're really fast. You need to have the baby out now because if not, we need to forceps or vacuum the baby. And then I remember giving her this stare. I didn't really talk because I was in that hypnotizing zone, but I just gave her this stare. In my mind, I was like, you're not yanking my baby out. I'm delivering her. I was like, let me do what I need to do. The baby's coming out naturally. Yeah, so I kind of deliver Awana out very calmly, just breathing in and out. I've got to feel so connected with her, and it was such a beautiful journey. And I must say, I really, really enjoyed my whole labor process. So that's
Yeah, I'm so glad that you did what you needed to do for yourself with your delivery, and you went for hypnobirthing and helped with the whole process. But I really want to move on to what advice you have for listeners out there who are seeking advice around loss, grief, pregnancy. Yes, so please share with us your takeaways,
yeah.
your insights for listeners.
Yep. So a lot of people ask, "Oh, does time just heal your grief?" Right? Actually, it was the action during that grief period that actually heals, not just the time alone. Because if I have a garden full of weed today, just letting it with time, the weed is not going to go. I need to kind of take action, what to do, right? So I think throughout my journey, a lot of talking, reflecting, journaling kind of really help. A lot of times we talk about coping mechanism. I need to learn to cope with this, cope with this. But what I've learned is releasing mechanism. How do I release all this stuck energy, stuck emotion, and all this grief and trauma in my body? Yoga was one of the way that I kind of use. And then after that, I kind of use energy healing, sound bath, but movement activities really helps me in that sense. And journaling out at that point, talking it out helps me to process my emotions and thoughts better. So that is a really good releasing mechanism. The other one that I would really suggest is called TRE, tension release exercises. You can check that out, and also emotional freedom technique, EFT. So what they call tapping in that sense, because for me that really helped, TRE and EFT. In 2018, I delivered my daughter. 2019, the infection came back, and this time it attacked my face, right? So that's another form of grief for me. So it's like one grief after another. And this time around, I was really, really scared for this one, much more than the death, because when the death, I kind of really know I was deaf before I even hit into surgery. But this one, the doctor did tell me, I need you to know, Vernessa, if the infection decides to eat on your facial nerves, because it was right on top of my facial nerves at that time, there is absolutely nothing I can do for you. People who have stroke, right, they can rehab because the nerve is still there. But if your nerve is gone, there's really nothing we can do. We can at most just do plastic surgery and fix your face up. So I was really scared because I was already a mom. How am I going to have clear speech with my child? How do I read her book? How do I smile? Right? And then how about my career? Like, I'm an educator. How am I going to teach when I can't even talk? So there was a lot of grief in that sense. And one of the coping mechanism at the time, which I also hear it from a lot of other people, is keeping busy. Society kind of praises us for, oh, you're moving forward very fast. We call it resilient, we call it efficient, we call it forward thinking, positivity. But at the same time, I feel at that time, I was just running away. I was just packing myself with so much activity back to back that I don't have time to think and feel. I was just doing, but I wasn't being. And I tend to like to be out a lot. I don't like to be left alone. And that was my coping mechanism. Does it solve the problem? It distracts me from the problem. It suppresses me on the emotions so deep down that I myself started to believe that, oh, I'm functioning, I'm okay because I can work, I can eat, I can socialize, I can operate. But really, really deep down, I wasn't, if I'm being very honest and raw with myself. So this is the part that on grief, a lot of them like, but I was already okay. And then all of a sudden one night I think about it and then I started crying, right? I feel like I'm still stuck, does it mean that I'm still stuck in the past and not move on because I'm still crying, I'm still thinking about it? I shouldn't be thinking about it anymore.
Yeah. So this is where the body speaks. Yeah, we get it. This is where the body speaks. So you had the threat of the infection attacking your face, and obviously it's okay. So I'm very glad for that. But I really want to move to your work, holding space for other mummies. Maybe you can share a little bit other tips for listeners out there around dealing with loss and grief, besides what you just shared, like movement, journaling, and different modalities of healing. Like, what do you do in your work to support other mummies?
So what I do every 2 months biannually, bi-monthly, not annually, I kind of hold a circle for them, for moms who've been through pregnancy loss and dads as well. But this is very much on pregnancy loss, but I do other grief work as well. So people come to me, that someone in the family committed suicide, there's death, they're moving to a new country, there's pet loss, things like that as well, because it's literally grief, right? So the method that I use for pregnancy loss is able to use for others as well. The grief recovery work, grief recovery method, right, is basically, you will go through what are your loss in your lifetime, right? And then from that loss, you work on just one relationship at a time that you want to work with. And what we do is a lot of completing that emotional pain, saying things that we might wish that we could have said but didn't say, things that we wish could have been better, more, things that I could. These are like all undelivered communications, right? Or expectations that we have but wasn't able to kind of bring it out. Yep. So in a grief recovery method, this is our opportunity to write out and say things. It's a very guided process. So it's a 6 to 7 weeks process that actually I bring the participants through. And then at the end, if they would like to do more, then we actually go into further coaching. Because a lot of times, the grief, we think that, oh, I'm sad. It's very surface. Coaching, we kind of deep down a little bit more. Is there a family pattern in this in your life? How about your childhood? How did your parents go through grief? And there's a lot of aha moments in that. So I do that grief recovery method. I do the coaching, and I also bi-monthly hold a space for moms and dads who've gone through pregnancy loss to come together. And in that session, we do mindfulness, we do art and craft sometimes, we do journaling. This year, also October every year, it's when the Pregnancy Loss and Infant Loss Awareness Month. That's when we hold events as well, to honor the babies that born too soon. But in terms of grief work, it's also very important. If you choose to hold space for someone because they're crying, they have a lot of energy, do not dismiss their feelings, and do not tell them not to cry, because that's where that energy needs to come out, right? And as you, as a person who are holding space, you also need to know not to take on that emotion. So imagine if I'm a coach and I'm constantly taking everyone's emotion, I will be so drained at the end of the day. So you also need to know how to release it out, and understanding that it's their grief journey, you can only support, but they need to kind of walk it through themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how do you Yes. So how do you hold space for others? With the work that you do, it sounds really intense. How do you hold space for them without becoming drained yourself?
So sometimes after that, I will actually go into nature, just put my feet on the ground and just ground myself back again, right? Or sometimes I will also tell myself, I'm holding space. These emotions doesn't belong to me. So whatever that comes, just comes through me, and I do the work. It doesn't come into me. Or sometimes you visualize that the emotion comes in front of you and you're just holding space. So that's also quite important, to understand that you don't need to take everything and walk with you, or else you'll be burnt out before you can actually help any of the participants.
Yes.
So
So it's
just
very much about learning how to release.
mm, mm. And sometimes all they really need is for you to listen to them. Not so
Mm,
much of fixing, because you need to go in with the mentality, I'm not here to fix, I'm not here to change anything, or I'm not here to advise you. I'm just here to hear your story and give you a voice to say the story, or undelivered communications that you didn't have the chance. And you'll be surprised sometimes when they verbalize it out, they're like, oh wow, I wasn't expecting that, it's such a relief just able to speak it out, because a lot of times they just keep everything inside and internalize things. So how do you verbalize your emotions and thoughts? Yeah.
yeah, that's very important because, like you mentioned, I think a lot of us, Asians or otherwise, we think it's very much a logical mental process, when in reality it's emotional, it's physical, it's stored in our body, and it's really important to honor what comes up, so that we can actually move on much easier by also learning ways to do releasing. So
Yeah.
it's so great that you are supporting people in your work in these ways. So I was just curious, because you mentioned just now that you do releasing through crying, and so one of the questions that written down for me to ask you is, so is it true that people who are still crying, people who cry, they are still stuck in the past, and that they have not been able to move on?
Yeah, so this is a very common one. Because when we cry, we feel like shameful sometimes, embarrassed, and we start blaming ourselves and justifying why, right? But actually, the more you can hold space for yourself, the more you will heal, because you're acknowledging. And it's not about, so I like to use this analogy. Sometimes people say, but I shouldn't be thinking about that anymore. I shouldn't be thinking about my lost child. And I ask them why. It's like, because it's the past. I was like, do you miss your grandparents if they're not no longer around? They're like, yeah. I was like, why? But it's in the past. And what's the difference? And then sometimes they say, oh, because I didn't really have the relationship with the child, right? My relationship with my grandparents. I was like, do you grieve for your dog that passed away? They're like, yeah. I said, if you can grieve for your dog, you can't grieve for your child. Well, how does that make sense? And sometimes they're like, oh, because it's intangible. I didn't really actually see that child. I didn't really actually have a long relationship with that child. And then my next question for them would be, have you ever seen God? There's just a trust that there's that connection, right? Even though it feels intangible, invisible, that leap of faith, right? It's same for the child. And then a lot of times that kind of hit them like, oh, okay, I kind of get what you mean now. I never thought of it that way. So sometimes it's just a perception of changing their observation of how they kind of see things. Yeah, and if you can cry and hold space for yourself, that's awesome, because you know how to hold space for yourself, release, and when you need to function, come out of that and function again. It's not like you're going to be stuck there. It's emotions come and go. They're just visitors. They're not there for good, and they're not there to define you, or they're not part of you. Good times doesn't last long, so the bad times. So just know how to, okay, I feel very sad this moment. Why am I feeling so sad? What do I need to acknowledge? Verbalize it. I like to use EFT a lot because that's when I verbalize and release my stress and anxiousness. So just give you a quick example. It's a lot of tapping of different parts of the body, and then I would say things like, I release my fear and anxiousness about something, or
Yeah.
I release my fear about something, and then I'll give myself positive affirmations after that. I'll be like, I'm loved for who I am, not what I do. I'm enough. This is possible, and that kind of, just that 10 minutes does a lot of magic for me, and that's something that you can do anytime and anywhere. It doesn't need to have, you got to learn the techniques first, but then after that you can kind of do it yourself. Tapping solutions, um, their website, it's good because they do a lot of, like, if you need to be motivated, if you feel very drained that day, things like that. They have a lot that you can kind of work on. I hope that helps.
Yes, yes, I know about EFT, and I like that is what you mentioned, a combination of releasing and also affirmations, and also movement, and the intention of letting it go out of your body, plus the movement really helps. You can be really gentle about it. I think a lot of times when it comes to healing and releasing, people always think of like what we see in the movies and dramas, where there's like wailing and howling, but in reality, a lot of times, because of embarrassment, because of culture, I think we don't express the way people assume that we will express, and it's so important that whatever way we release is the way that we release, and we just need to develop the self-awareness that you're talking about. So it sounds like a really deep journey of um, healing, development, and releasing that you have gone through. And now you're doing your best work supporting people who are going through grief. I feel like this has become your passion and your calling. So, what do you see for yourself for the future?
I actually wish this work could spread more, because a lot of people are like, it's very emotional work, and it's very heavy. They're not too sure if they can take it. So I kind of wish that I can hold more circles and support more, especially men as well. A lot of men, um, people think that they don't grieve because they don't cry, but people relate crying as grieving. That's also not true. Men has delayed grief. They might grieve in terms of anger, frustration. So it's a very different method. And so that's what I kind of do in my coaching session as well. So I kind of want to briefly touch on the grief recovery method as well. It kind of teaches you what are the different myths of grief, because sometimes it talks about you need to be strong for yourself and others. Time with you, it'll be okay. Keeping yourself busy. So these are like the myths that we kind of go through, and a lot of times they're like, I didn't realize I was so stuck in that myth that I wasn't allowing myself to actually grieve, and grief will
Yeah.
really show through your body. Yeah.
Yeah, it is what it is, and it's different for different people. It's so important that we don't repress and suppress, because what needs to come out needs to come out. I always say this, when we eat, we shit, we drink water, we pee. So why is it when all these things are coming into us, we're experiencing all kinds of different experiences, negative ones and trauma, that we think there's honor in holding it into our body. In reality, by letting go, by acknowledging, holding space for ourselves. I love what you said, holding space for ourselves. We can actually be able to be healthier people. So I'm so glad for the work that you're doing. So I want to do a shout out once again. So your website is www.mindfulspace.com.sg, and you can find Vernessa.coach at Facebook, and on Instagram, pregnancy.loss.coach. So thank you so much, Vernessa, for coming on this show.
Thank you. If I can end with a word, I would say there's no timeline in grief. Grieve at your own pace, at your own time.
Yes, that's so true. Thank you so much. This has been such an important and yet sensitive topic. I'm so grateful for you for sharing your personal story, because there's nothing that connects us more than stories. And it's I know it's also very emotionally exhausting each time to reshare it. So thank you so much for all that you do. Yeah. So next week, we are going to be talking about body image. That will be like the last episode. I'm going to be taking a break for now. So do stay tuned to the last episode of Eros Evolution for now. And yeah, do check out my work as well. That's eroscoaching.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Bye.